Good morning. Good morning. It is still morning. Guess what? It's day 3 of the Facebook Live challenge. So 3 days in a row, I've made it. I've fulfilled my commitment, and working on more. We're going to get all the way through the 30-day challenge. So it's Monday. I hope you've had a good weekend. You've gotten some rest. You've maybe done some recharging and a little bit of rejuvenation, and that you are ready to rock this week. Now, it's December, and I know we're just a few weeks away from Christmas. We're a few weeks away from the hype of the holiday shopping going away and that sort of thing. So I know you're in decorating mode, you're in cooking mode, you're in making holiday plans mode, and you're in shopping mode. So it's time to focus on podcast mode, because a couple of things. There's a bunch of new podcasts that are getting ready to launch. They're going to be launching at the beginning of the year, so you got to be ahead of them. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, and if hopefully you're already listed, your podcast is already up and running and listed on the big three. I would say the big three. There's probably a big four now: iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. That's like where most people are listing their shows. But I wanted to talk to you about a couple other places that you need to submit a podcast to. And then I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent about whether you should join a podcast network or not. So, hey, Mickey, good to see you. Pam, good morning. Pam, we can feed your podcasting addiction. So that's okay that you join us, because actually, those of us that are podcasters are just glad to see that there are actually podcast listeners that are out there. So it does our hearts good to see you around and give us actual good feedback. So, but one of the things that you might not have realized is, since you started your podcast, or if your podcast is a little bit older, is that there is this cycle of new show or new podcasting networks, directories, and that sort of things that are coming out. And is it worthwhile to chase down and submit your show to every possible place that's out there? Well, it could be, depending on a few things. So for those of you who haven't listened or haven't paid attention, a lot going on in the podcasting world right now, I want to make you aware that obviously Spotify did just go live with Libsyn. So if you are with Libsyn, you can be on Spotify now. Also, if you've been podcasting for more than 2 months and you are on iHeartRadio, you are on Libsyn, you can then get on iHeartRadio. So you can do that through your Libsyn dashboard, and it's very easy to do. But a couple of new places have come on the scene in just, the past year that you kind of need to pay attention to. One of them is called TuneIn, and I think it's actually called TuneIn Radio. But let me tell you why it's important for you to get your show listed on TuneIn. You know those speakers, the Amazon Echoes, the Dots, anything that you can say, hey, Alexa, or even with Apple, I think Apple has what they call the HomePods. So you can say, hey, Siri, and sometimes you get your phone mixed up with your house and you call Alexa Siri and she doesn't answer. So you understand why she's not working and responding to you when you realize you've called her by the wrong name. So anyway, but she is a good thing to have for podcasters, because statistically 70% of those connected homes having that speaker listen to podcasts. And you might be wondering, how do I get on those podcast places that those connected speakers are pulling from? Well, ding, 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 that is TuneIn Radio. So you want to submit your show to TuneIn Radio, because that will get you connected, so that when Alexa says, hey, or when you say to Alexa, hey, Alexa, can I listen to Podcast Rescue, Alexa's going to be able to pull up Podcast Rescue, which is my podcast, which you should be listening to anyway. And I'm still fighting with iTunes about why it's not coming up in search. So we'll see who ultimately wins that battle. I'm trying to be nice to iTunes and do all the things I'm supposed to do so that they'll make it search properly. But anyway, so TuneIn, you want to get on. The other place that's kind of really good is Radio Public. Now, Radio Public isn't a listening app, and it's got a really good in built-in features, I guess is what you call them. Like, even as a podcaster, like if I said to you, as a listener of my show, I have created a customized playlist of shows that are doing X, Y, or Z really well. I could have gone into Radio Public and created a feed specifically pulling in those shows, those specific shows that I want, and then provide them to you. So maybe let's just say you're a mommy show and we're coming up on the holidays and people might have to travel. So maybe you want to go into Radio Public and create a feed of shows that you could let your kids listen to while you're traveling. You could do that, and then you could provide it on your website for people to go and click through and that sort of thing. So, oh my gosh, Alexa just responded to me. That is hilarious. Hey, Alexa. Make sure Mickey plays all the podcasts. Just keep them on speed dial or whatever you do. So anyway, but one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure you are at places not just where podcasters put their shows, but you actually want to be at places where people listen to the shows. Now, the one thing about listening to a show is you've got to have listeners, right? Listening to a show on a podcast directory or destination requires most of the time people to have mobile, the app or that sort of thing. So you've got to have a place to listen that people are downloading if you want to get more than just places where podcasters are putting their shows. I don't think it's worthwhile. These podcast directories come and go, and some of them, all they're trying to do is pull in enough podcasters so that they can then try to get advertisers. And with the advertisers, you've got to have listeners to support advertisers. So if all they're doing is focusing on podcasters, then you're still missing where are the listeners. So you want to go and be where the listeners are. So let me tell you a couple of things. Whenever you're looking at somewhere to go, look for their app. Look at their app in the iOS and in Google Play or Google, whatever their thing is, Google Music, Google Play, I think it is, where they have the Android apps. Look and see how many times it's been downloaded. Look and see how many reviews it has. If it has a lot, then people are listening and people are coming there to find podcasts, and that's a great place for you to be, especially if it's free. If they don't have a lot of reviews and they don't have a lot of downloads of the show, it's probably not that big of a deal. Now, we're on a lot of places that aren't that big of a deal, and a lot of places that aren't that big a deal can add up over time. So if it's free to be on there, it's not a bad thing to add that to your repertoire. There's some other places that I would call these sort of like podcast portals, like they're the Acast and the Mixcloud and the places like that. They basically want you to come in and they want you to record your show there, host your show there, and then they also have this side directory thing. And even if you don't do the hosting or the recording of your show there, you can still sort of put your show on their directory. So again, is it worthwhile? Depending on how many listeners they have. Mixcloud is one. It seems to be like radio oriented, their whole thing is making radio better. Well, if you consider podcast radio, you might want to put your show on there. You can submit to those places. A lot of them are just don't expect a lot of downloads. So be careful about paying. You don't want to pay to be somewhere where you're not getting the downloads, which brings me to my next question. I get asked this all the time. Should you join a podcast network? And especially if you are in a very well-defined niche like the mompreneur, maybe you're in health and wellness, maybe you're in fitness, maybe you're a daddy show, or maybe you are a you deal with a specific thing like maybe gardening or horses or hydroponics. How about that for a $30 word for first thing Monday morning? But maybe you have a specific show and you've been approached by someone to be on their podcasting network. Now, here's what's happening. The podcasting networks are basically trying to pull in people that have sort of the similar niche topics that would attract the same audience. They can try to draw as much audience as they can to that network. And then they want to go out and say, hey, can we get advertisers, or can we get, yes, Glenn, horses. We know Horses in the Morning. That is the premier podcast network. And I would never say a bad thing about it because Glenn will do you right. So if you love horses, you should be on Try to get on Glenn's network. He runs a tight ship over there, though, so you got to be on your toes. So, but there are a lot of podcast networks that are popping up. And let me just tell you a couple of things that I want you to consider before you join one. How much does it cost for you to join a network? Well, I'll just tell you this. There are some out there that are going to take up to $600 a year from you. And you might have to look at what are they offering you for $600 a year. Now, let me just say this. There are some networks, and I'm going to say with Glenn specifically, you can join Glenn's network, and Glenn can actually pay you money to come and produce a show for him. So if you want to make the big bucks, go to Glenn. Get a horse. No. But there are some that do it that way. So there are some, I think the Beer Network is another one that does it, where they pay you to actually do the show and do the content. What we're seeing right now is a lot of networks pop up where shows are being asked and approached to be on the network, and you've already got your existing show, you've got your existing feed. They say, hey, come just join our network. You don't have to change your feed. You don't have to change your hosting. You don't have to change anything. Just pay us $600, and okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a place on our website, and we're going to give you a page on our website. We've got an app that we're going to give you, put all your stuff on, and you're going to be listed on our app. And then we're going to help market you on our social media platforms. And we're going to, there's all these things that they're doing for you. They may or may not include advertising. If they do include advertising, obviously you want to know how much of that you would get, how much the network would get. Sometimes it's only about 50% that you would get. So realize half your advertising money is going to go somewhere else, because you probably have an advertising network in there, an advertising company in there that's going out and getting the ads. And then you also have the podcast network also taking another cut. So between they're each taking a portion of whatever your 100% is, and you're only left with 50%. So you might do better off trying to get a different type of advertising deal that way. But here's the interesting thing. I have some clients that have been approached by a particular network, and I'm just using it as an example. I'm not even going to mention the name of it. But the issue that I have with it, and a couple of my clients have joined the network and a couple haven't. And so there's a couple of things you want to look for. Now, this particular one, I'm just going to use it as an example, is niche specific. So it's all going after specific targeted niches that are drawing the same listener. And their spiel is if you pay for the full year, I think it's $500. If you pay like twice a year, it's $300 each time. So up to $600 during the year. And so what they say is all the things I just listed. We'll give you a place on our podcasting app. We'll give you a place on our social media. We'll give you a place on our website. We're going to list you there. We're going to help promote you. So, okay, great. They're basically saying for $600 a year, we are going to market your show. And that's not a bad price to market your show if that's actually what they're doing. So what you want to do is go in and see how good they are at marketing. Because if I'm telling you, hey, so-and-so, I'm going to charge you $600 a year for marketing, then I best darn know my marketing. You know what I mean? I best know what I'm doing with marketing. So go in, look at their social media accounts. How many followers do they have? If they have 122 followers and they're talking about you pay me money to market, they're probably in the weeds as far as knowing what to do to market to get followers and that sort of thing. Secondly, how engaged is their following? Is most of their posts on the social media for the network about join our network as a podcaster? Excuse me. If that's the case, you see what's happening here? They're basically going to the place that's paying them money, right? Look at their Twitter. How many followers do they have? How many tweets do they have? How many people are following them? That's the biggest thing. It's not how many tweets do you have, it's how many people are following you. If you do 10,000 tweets and you have, you follow 3,000 people and only 120 of them are following you, then that's probably not the best use of your marketing dollars. Because what you're doing is basically saying, here's $600 from my marketing budget that I'm going to give to this network to try to get the word out there because I don't have time to do it. Now, whether you decide to affiliate for a larger reason than just the marketing, you also can look at another thing to look at besides just the network stuff is, check out all their social media channels, dig in, act like you're a private eye. I do this all the time because clients say, "What, do you know about this? Have you heard about this? What about this?" And I'm like, I'll go to their Alexa rankings. I'll look at what the competition's doing. I'll look up their SEO for their website, look up all this stuff. And if I'm impressed, I'll say join it. If I'm not, I'm like, they're not there yet. They're just not there yet, because in my mind, if someone's giving you $600, you better darn well get something for it. So look at the big shows, what I call the anchor shows of the network, maybe the ones that have been with them from the beginning. There are some clues about how good or how big the following those shows have that you can get by looking at iTunes. Look for legitimate reviews. I'm not talking about the review swaps where everybody's gone in and swapped and they now have 2,200 reviews. I'm talking about go ahead and look at their reviews, talking about look at their social media. I'm talking about seeing how active and engaged their following is. Go to those websites for that big show. Do they have a lot of comments on their websites? Are they doing things to engage their audience? Because if they're not, they're in the same boat as you are, and it doesn't do any good for like the network to sort of be the blind leading the blind and the whole entire network be comprised of people that don't have the pull to bring in more people to the network. So really, really look at what that network is doing for you. And if their social media following isn't as big as yours, then you're throwing your money away, because they're not going to be able to figure it out any better than you will. Now, if there's something you're wanting to be affiliated with, like for example, there is a one sort of famous business person that has a particular network, and they sort of try to keep it all, sort of exclusive and that sort of thing. Check those out, because there might be some people that are influencers that it would be worthwhile for you to pay to be in front of. But by and large, check out that network, vet them like you would anyone else that you give your money to, and don't just give your money and throw away $600. $600 is a good amount of marketing budget. Think about it. It's $50 a month you could run on Facebook ads or other things if you knew what you were doing. So, and then at the same time, the advertising, and a lot of times is something completely different. And many times with those networks, if they do let you get advertising, double check. Do they need you to switch your podcast host to a completely different feed? If that's the case, then you might end up losing some ground with your subscribers or your listeners or your reviews and those sorts of things. So definitely make sure you check it all out, because there's a whole lot that you could be missing if you don't just really dig into what's going on with the network and look and see how many, you can tell how good people are at marketing by how many people they get to join their network and pay the money. But at the same time, if they do all that and they don't know how to reach the listeners, that's a side of the marketing that they are missing, and you're not going to benefit from them if you're not in touch with them. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a idea of where you should be and should you join a network. At the same time, I'm going to go ahead and update the post here with 4 or 5 different places that you should submit your podcast if you haven't already gotten on those networks. It's going to be like Radio Public, TuneIn, Mixcloud, Podkicker, Podbean. It's a few places. If they're free, hey, there's no point in not getting on those networks. So going to update the post there. Hope you guys have a good day. Listen, we'll be back for day 4 tomorrow. Facebook Live Challenge, 30 days. Are you in? Can you do it with me? Don't be scared. It's not as bad as we thought it is. All right. Have a good day, you guys. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.